So what I've done in this segment is to get into the key topics related to transportation uh, and uh, and really help us get to. So we can skip these first ones. So these are the items I'd like us to be able to walk through and set the stage for discussions. Definitely get a full understanding of what multimodal means. Uh, Work on complete street, target speeds, parts of the street, bike facilities, safe route to school, and then implementing and public engagement. So I want to stress that often what we want, what we value, is not what we've been building. And I think we all know that from our own experiences. But when we look at a scene like the upper right, the one that's going to make the money, the one that's going to be healthy, is the lower right, but it's the same space. We just have to have the right elements in order to bring that all together. So this is a town we worked in recently, Avon, Colorado. You can see in the upper right photo, that used to be a 5-lane road. And they said, what in the world? How crazy could we be? So they already did a road diet. They got it down to 2 lanes. But now they say, well, now we want to honor that as a downtown. So if you look at the lower left, we built them that concept where they could do back in angled parking and have the bike lanes as you see them. But then they said, maybe we don't want a roundabout. Maybe we want a compact intersection. So you can see when we talk about a complete street, it could be any of a variety of things based on what the local need is. Complete streets are very flexible. A little bit on coming up with a balanced transportation system. When we think of a multimodal, we're thinking on the one hand, land use that supports multimodal, and then on the transport side, those elements that go into making that work. So I like to distinguish between multimodal transportation versus the multimodal land use strategies that help you get there. A good example of a multimodal community is the one you see pictured here. It requires the buildings as well as the bike lanes if we're truly going to have people riding bikes, use transit, walk, and so on. And with that, to make sure that we're being inclusive of all people, that we make, like on the lower left, the driveway you see there, that's a driveway. But we can still make it friendly for walking or biking, which we did. That happens to be in Gig Harbor. Also to understand and the distinction between mobility and accessibility, and that we need both. But what the main thing with multimodal communities is that we're trying to maximize the ways in which people can get around, the seamlessness of being able to switch out from one mode to another. Are all 3 of your bigger communities now complete streets communities? And if not, is that a direction you're trying to get to? I know that in 2006, you were working to help orchestrate a street design manual. These are some of the benefits you get out of rebuilding and giving the engineers more tools to achieve. And again, kind of build a picture of a complete street. It works for fire, works for transit, works for walking, works for biking, works for cars, but it doesn't favor cars. And again, you can see from this image how you've been building many great roundabouts, gateways, good walking systems, biking systems. So the language should be very well established. But I want to point out that complete streets are not a particular design. It's not a particular prescription. It's a principle. It's a policy. It's a way to go about building the open street or whatever type of street you want to achieve community goals, to make your community in the end more livable. And I've tried to populate this with as many Washington-based photos as I could. There are a couple really cool things, and I just want to make sure everyone on the call speaks the same language, that if we can keep speeds, certainly on a main street near schools and so on, at 20, we have a very high survival rate. But if we just go up 10 miles per hour, the chances of losing your life in traffic in a crash is just 4 times higher. And then if you just go up another 10, very few people survive a hit at 40. So the principles we're going to talk about, I think, are going to be core. They're going to be just essential that we understand where we can gain the right speed for the right location. One thing that every community in America is going to have to take on, not many have yet, is getting away from the concept that if 85% of the motors are driving a certain speed, that we designed the street for people to drive that speed. It should be based on the neighborhood. It should be based on the land use strategies as to what we end up. So we have to get away from this 85th percentile is what we should post the streets at. Let's design the streets for the speed that we want and strive for that. And we'll get into that in just a minute of how that looks. Notice here that the concept, let me see if I can make that bigger. I like that. That's better. In building a complete streets program, and with your strategies, do you have all the right tools in place to be able to get all your measures through, and to build citywide systems, and in your case, regional systems, right? Okay, I love this image. I think it shares with us that one street probably had been 4 lanes at one time. They've got narrow lanes. Those are 10-foot lanes, probably overly wide bike lanes in both sides. But notice the left-hand side has sidewalks attached. It has to, just because of the land uses and other challenges. But on the right-hand side, they have on-street parking. They have a green edge, and the sidewalk is set back. On that side, you have more residential units, so it worked out really well. But it's all the same street, and both sides are correct for the land use. A little bit on the cost. Notice that when you go to build a road from scratch, the element that we finish out for walkability, bikeability, is only a tiny fraction. These are Washington DOT examples of out of a 15, almost a 16 million, only a $250,000 was needed for getting the complete streets elements. Everything else the street must do is much more expensive. I also like to encourage communities to measure the things that you want to achieve. Stop measuring or overemphasize the measurement of level of service during peak hour of supporting single occupant vehicle drivers, when you might prefer to have a place that's more walkable, bikeable, transit friendly, place all the elements that go with that. A lot of work has now been done in big cities. This is New York City, where they were able to reduce crashes and increase the retail sales a phenomenal amount by now catering more for, in this case, bicycling, but walking the same thing. So think about, again, how you design a street also gets you to the economic achievements you would like. In recent years, we've been able to focus on how we're going to get more people walking and biking. If you look at the strong and fearless, they're out there no matter what. You've also got a small number that are enthusiastic and confident, and they'll use roads that are modified some. But take a look at the 51%. That's the huge number that we're not serving today. That if we start with, say, buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and other systems, the number of people are going to turn to walking and biking part-time or even full-time is just a phenomenal number. Another study that was done, I know this is a little fuzzy and hard to see, but it's a very important story. What the researchers were able to do here was to figure out stress. And so they looked at arterial category streets, collector category, and they found out so many of the streets had high stress that people couldn't even get across the streets. So only by connecting neighborhoods would they get any boost in their walking and biking. But it was so important to map out their community in this way so that they could see how their big disruptors, arterials, freeways, and other systems were keeping people from being able to go places for transportation with bikes. A very important study. So let's look at a collector category street. In both these scenes, these are collectors. And one will very likely has more lanes than it needs. It's much faster. Homes are built with their backside to the street, where on the top, again, a collector street, the street is correctly built for the right speeds, the right green, the right everything. And now it adds huge value to the homes. And now people can walk and they can bike and drive. So now let's get to another core concept. This is still a fairly new term. Not everybody's familiar with it yet. Is to set the target speed. That is the speed we want people to drive. And so the top road is 7 lanes. The bottom scene is only 4 lanes. Here's the cool thing. The one on top only moves about 18,000 cars. You can easily do that in 2 lanes. The one on the bottom is carrying 40,000 cars. So capacity has often been incorrectly assessed. As long as we use the right tools at the intersections, we don't need a vast number of lanes. And now we can add value to all the properties and so on. So transportation becomes a pretty cool tool when we apply the right concepts. You've seen these numbers before, so I won't dwell on them, but I now want to focus on how do we get the speeds down to what we consider a reasonable level. This is a project we worked on in Chico, California. Just anyone pop in, how fast do you think a motorist would drive here in the chat box? Just drop in a number 2, and if Chris, you could read those one number or 2 off. Just your best guess, based on what you see here, how fast would someone drive? And then what would you add to slow people down? Put in real edges. In this case, use of color. Populate it with parked cars. That creates a visual friction that slows people down. It really does. And then put in the overhead canopies. Now the big one. You ready for this one, folks?
Yeah, I want to break in. There were a couple guesses of 35 to 45 miles per hour. And folks, if you do want to respond, you have to use the Q&A box rather than the chat box. So it's.
Oh, you do? Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Chris. And that's really, truly what most people guess. And so here, you're almost ready. The transportation engineers have done all they can do, but now you bring in your developers and city planners, and now you've got place. And now the speeds truly are down into the 18, 19 miles per hour. So that we've had that as a target all along, but we had to apply layers of tools to be able to come up with what we need.
Dan, what was the correct answer about the speed on that street in Chico?
35 or 40, yeah, when it was in its original format. It hasn't been fully built out yet, but when it does, we just know it's going to be down around the 18 or 19 miles an hour. Yeah. So this is a state road. It's in a small part of the peninsula of Florida. But look what they've done. They've used curb extensions, native plants, and other materials to really bring down the speeds. The median's probably the biggest tool to make all this work, but here the speeds are about 18 or 19 miles an hour, and yet it's a state road. Other parts, the edge of the building, you always need a place that people are going to shy away from. They're not going to walk right next to the building. You also need a place to put all your furniture. And then all that leaves is the space for walking, talking, and all the other functions. One that I really like here in Washington, this is in Squim, is this particular road. Notice, again, there's a difference. The foreground sidewalk, for land use reasons, had to be attached, but the bike lane saved the day, and it's still a comfortable place to walk. But as soon as they can, they set back and they get a nature strip in and build out a canopy. Same with the median, same with the opposite side. So I just wanted to share some examples of what a complete street might look like. In a neighborhood, these are some of the tools that people can apply. Again, the best solution are the short blocks to start with, but then what you do at the intersections, very important. Seattle now, I think they're up to over 2,000 mini circles. They have brought down their crashes in neighborhoods about 93%. And they've been doing this for quite a while. And I think you've got a number of mini circles in Thurston County. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, Olympia especially has done a lot of traffic calming in particular neighborhoods. It's not nearly as widespread as Seattle, but it is
okay.
Going in various places.
Yeah. So some other tools I like personally, I like to keep parking decks down to like 6 feet. Well, that won't work if you're right next to a travel lane, but it will work if you then put in your drainage outbound so that you're getting another 2 feet. So you're back up to the 8. And now you've got a buffer to the bike lane as well as a buffer to the parking. And then in this case, they kept the travel lane down to 10 feet. That again is Davidson, North Carolina. Another road diet in this case in Santa Cruz. Every element here was very carefully thought through. They kept the sidewalk as wide as they could, kept enough space to grow good trees, and then flush, seamless gutter pan link, and kept the lanes down to 10 feet. Pretty cool designs. Medians are so important. This road on the right had been a 5-lane. Lake Oswego. Many of you have probably been there, but it's a great city to study. They really brought back their downtown. Just absolutely stunning, the steps they've taken. Now we have curbless streets, or with a slightly different variation, open streets. In this case, curbless. They again use the valley gutter to capture the water. So it's a different approach. And again, motorists drive very differently when they don't see the hard curbs and they see more emphasis on designing for people. We did that on this particular project in Florida. Curbless, valley gutter, and just a very nice demarcation of buffers. Really good sidewalk. This Jacksonville Beach really brought back that area. I know Thurston County, I want to say, is one of the golden nuggets for roundabouts. You guys are and should be proud of the many ways you've been bringing down your crashes using roundabouts. Roundabouts will typically move 30, as high as 50% more traffic. Notice this one, which is not, of course, as you get higher volumes and you're starting to push your margins, you've got to add in the added lanes. So look how wide this crossing is. And if we look at a treatment probably no more than 1,000 feet away, this treatment with the roundabout theoretically can handle the same volume as the road you see here, which is just immense. And again, it's all based on loading factors where you can really get up to that number 25,000. But we've got many that are performing at that level. Little bit on the breakout on bike facilities. We're wanting to really show the creativity, the innovations that are being applied, whether they're off-street, multi-path systems, or joint use systems, or in this case, it was a two-way road. They turned along a beach in Kauai, and they said, we only need this to be one way. Or I'm not for one ways a lot. They're a powerful tool when they're properly used. And so they are able to, in this case, have a dedicated way for bicycling. And then, of course, you can use color to differentiate between walking spaces and biking spaces. Let's go through the whole family of bicycle facilities. Sharrows are the only meant to be used on low speed roads, and they should never be used as a cop out to complete a system. They should always be used when they're truly the best purpose. And then go up to the highest in the family of bike facilities, buffered by land uses, in this case, parking. This one is in Cambridge, actually worked very well. Or Missoula, Montana. Again, bringing the bicyclist out. This had been multiple lane road. They took it down to 3 lanes and then took the extra space to build the protected bike lanes, as you see here. And again, bring the cyclists out at the intersections. Bike lanes are a measure up from not doing anything or sharrows, but we can do more creative things with bike lanes. We can use color distinctions. Notice these examples. Now we're up to a buffered bike lane. And now the full range, including on the lower left, the protected bike lane. The one here you see multi-use trail, really cool. This is in Davis. They built the off-road system, but they kept the bike lanes in the road. They're very thoughtful on how they're going to meet different needs, people going different speeds, and so on. So I wanted to go through a full family of systems for you to see and enjoy. Now getting people across the street. Very well done. This one in Davis forces the cyclist to look both directions and slows them down and gives them a really a good crossing, again, median supported. In Kirkland, Washington, a really good trail here. This is one that runs the entire community. This turns out to be one of the more key crossings you see here. Just a quick coverage of safe routes to school. And I want to get into some of the tools that, again, we apply. You can see this road without the tools, same road with the tools. And very important to understand that from about 1978 until now, we've essentially gone from where 30 and even 40% of students were able to walk to school or bike to school. Now, in some areas, we're down to 10% or 12%. Here you see the actual numbers used here. Skip this since we've already seen the numbers. I love how many of your streets you've been able to get down to 10-foot lanes. This particular scene down here with the bus, those are 10-foot lanes. And I know that there has to be good discussion in order to be able to do this, but you see a decrease in crashes, more appropriate speeds for the context when you get away from 12-foot lanes down to 11, but even more so being able to get down to 10-foot lanes. And again, I use Thurston County as a good example. I am a strong proponent of getting rid of center lines in urban spaces when they're not needed. They force motorists to hug curbs and come too close to bicyclists. So this is just a photomorph of taking the treatment and moving the motorists now away from the sidewalks and slowing down traffic as a result. Each of your schools should be working on a master plan. Hopefully this has been done, or maybe it's a future effort that can be made. And then a lot of schools are now applying fines in doubling the fines in school zones and getting the kinds of enforcement to bring it down. And then getting in good crossings, very highly recognizable. This is referred to as a Z crossing. Again, it forces the pedestrian to look in the direction of the motorist. And I now want to, let me skip this. I want to allow plenty of time for discussion. So let me take us to the greenways. So many benefits of greenways, especially as they protect the open space, can really build a lot of the bringing nature to the community. This one happens to be in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The developer built the units to be able to enjoy and watch over the trail. Really well done. Trails are good places for social engagement, to bring people together, to connect people, to build the support of more trails. And so I just want to show you some of the benefits that accrue. And when we build trails correctly, then you can get groups of riders going out for weekends, or working together for that. And then get the big benefit of connecting out through your rural communities and making that connection with nature as it's needed. So transit real quickly, Corvallis did a really good job. Rains there a lot, just as it does in Thurston County. And but this is a cool hub for buses and transit. And in Eugene, they did a splendid job of creating very attractive, very functional transit stops that then go back into the stores that are still suburban in character. Real quickly, I wanted to cover our a whole concept of public engagement. And keeping in mind, if we're going
last part, Dan, because there were some questions about this in the earlier Q&A segment, and just a heads up to folks that we're coming close to the end of the presentation now. So if you have questions that have come up during the course of either the first part or the second part, please have those ready and put them into the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to route those over to our speaker.
Thanks, Chris. So now on the implementation side, and again, really focusing on equity, we really need to be focusing on making all of our projects, neighborhood by neighborhood, downtowns, whatever area, where everybody gets a fair chance. And so we've developed some really powerful tools for public engagement that really work, and focus on those training sessions, just like this, and being recorded, something you can share, and getting the right policies in place and being able to move forward. There are so many documents now coming out from the federal level. The state of Washington is doing an outstanding job of getting more and more guidance out. But I think it's important that we have to reinvent the notion of the experts in this case are really the neighbors, the people using the roads. And yes, the professionals have a very key role to play, but as many years as I've been working in this field, I've come to trust the neighborhood leaders. They would never make a mistake for their neighborhood. They just won't do that. Sometimes if they don't understand something, they might stop something that is needed. But and I'll close with this image. It's in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, upper area of the state. And notice there is a sidewalk, and it's a 3-lane road. It's not 4, it's 3. But everyone realized, well, all the houses are on the other side. So the Michigan DOT wanted to build a sidewalk on the left-hand side. So they held a public meeting. And because they didn't use a really effective process, the 300 people who came all came to oppose the sidewalk. That they wanted to look rural. They had confusing or mixed ideas of what they wanted to achieve for their community. So with that, I'm wondering if we can now go to the questions and answers. Is that okay? And
Great, Dan.
Okay.
And there were some that were, I think, right on this topic here of what is the best way to start that engagement, to start a coalition, to get these kinds of projects to happen. Question about who should be involved, examples of successful private and public or private nonprofit with public joint efforts to work on livable communities.
So I think the important thing is where we weren't including the public or didn't use the right tools to engage the public. A lot of people gave up on engagement, and we have to make it exciting again. Something where people know they're going to be listened to, and that their ideas are going to come forth with the very best concepts. I'll just use some examples of traffic calming. The couple towns we've traffic calmed every neighborhood in town: Hartford, Connecticut, Clearwater, Florida, Honolulu, Hawaii. And what we were able to do is to start with 1 or 2 model neighborhoods, perfect our technique for engaging people, informing them of what tools there were. And we wouldn't show them tools that wouldn't work. We knew not to do that. But they needed a voice. They need to say, well, we like mini circles as opposed to chicanes or something like that. But the point is, with a really good public process, you're not building support for just that project. You're building them for all future projects, not just transportation either, for all kinds of projects. So a very important lesson there. And I know from Karen and other people who kept me well in the loop and informed that Thurston County's doing more than most people are for really good public engagement. But that's an area that could use. In fact, some of the towns I love the most, places like Valencia, California, have a full-time public engagement specialist. And I think the county with 300,000 population, approaching 300,000, could afford that type of a position. I use another example, Sammamish in Washington. They had a project that it was their main road through town. And the county, who had already built their portion, said, count on this to take 12 years. Well, in 12 years, the cost of a project go off the charts, right? So we came in, developed a plan for them on what process to follow. And we did it in a charrette. We did it in one weekend. And the city manager there, Ben Yazisi, had the bulldozers moving within 300 days. They didn't have money for the project, but because there was such great consensus in the community to go forward, they were truly able to get the project on the ground that same year. So, so important that people come together, that they endorse it, and so on. Yeah.
There's a different question that I saw earlier in the Q&A, and I know it's from one of our council members. I wanted to get that out there for you, and that is concern about multi-generational design, and particularly seniors, with a lot of us getting older. Do you have any thoughts on how to create multi-generational design projects and have them fit into your community?
Yeah, like housing, is that?
Yeah, most housing would be the key here. Yes.
Yeah. I think some really good examples is, again, I'm going to go to Redmond, Washington, where they're building all kinds of new housing and building it to be age friendly. So they're putting in outlets where they really belong. The support mechanisms, all the appliances and so on are structured correctly. But not every unit is designed as age friendly. So there are some units in the same platform of 12 or 16 units, I can't remember how many there were, that 4 were truly age friendly. But you also have to think about guests. People are going to come to a property. So having the right accessory units or the right design for a certain number of units is really important, but all units must be successful for ADA achievement, right? That you can get a wheelchair into every house or something like that. Yeah, we're in a period where we're just going to have to learn to do better with everything we do. And AARP now has some pretty good guides on how to help developers through the process, what code to put in place and things like that.
Thank you.
I think we're about out of time. I wanted to give an opportunity for our co-host, Mayor Pete Komet, to maybe do a quick closing of the session for tonight. I think we've addressed many of the questions. A couple of the ones that are still up there are kind of about overcoming a culture where people are making their decisions based on price and they're willing to travel long distances to get there. Similar kind of, the opposition to a notion of too dense in our community. So that's maybe something to ponder for our next session with the community, with our local government staff, because we will need some tools to accomplish that culture shift that some of the people participating tonight are, I think, referring to. So we'll get into some of this in more detail in the next session, but I did want to give an opportunity for Mayor Komet to close out, or Dan, for you to offer any final comments.
Yeah, I do want to make a couple of comments, but I think we need to, one more question, and I realize we're a little long, so if you could answer quickly, and that is the pandemic. It's in everybody's mind. A lot of initial concern about, oh, it's all because of the density, that the transmission occurred. How do you see the pandemic affecting some of the principles you've talked about here?
Well, I think the book's being written on what post-pandemic is going to look like. In fact, I was just at a world conference, virtual, people from 17 countries, 5 continents, all on this topic for the built environment. What is the post-pandemic world going to be more like? In general, I think we're going to gain more appreciation for walking, biking, transit, essential workers. I think there are going to be more companies that realize they don't need their employees to be in the office as many days a week, and some not at all. In fact, Blue Zones is an example of a company where only, I think 5 of our 30 staff actually work in an office, ever did. So we're learning new things, but how important schools are and how we can operate more shared streets, open streets, festival streets, and I think that on top of the new administration, which is recognizing huge amounts of money now need to capitalize the infrastructure of cities, that a lot of opportunities are going to come, and we just have to make sure we build really good models, but that we have the code in place, the incentives in place for developers to do the right thing. Things like parking. You know, we've given away free parking a lot, and parking is always a hot issue in a community. But if we can get away from, for example, forcing parking for an ADU unit, an accessory dwelling unit, then they become more affordable, far more affordable. And so I think we're going to have the great fortune of looking at everything through new lenses. So as sad as the pandemic itself has been, I think we're up for the next 10 or 20 years are going to be some of the best years to be working as a developer in government, as an advocate and so on. I'm just so pleased that we're getting that nudge to do things the right way in the future. Yeah, those
Well, thank you. I appreciate those insights. I do think you're seeing people out walking more, restaurants turning their towards the street more, and so I think we will see an investment, public investment more in those facilities, and hopefully the private sector will also learn lessons from it as well. Well, with that, I'll give you a second to make any closing remarks, but I just wanted again to thank you. First of all, thank you, Dan, and for doing this, and Chris for helping arrange and set this up. We do have a session coming up on Wednesday for city staff to delve a little more deeply into some of these issues. But the images are amazing. You went through them very quickly, so I hope people can have a chance to sort of pause and really ponder some of those things as they look forward. Again, for those of us involved in this business, I hope it's re-energized everyone and start to think about how we can accelerate our movement in this direction. And for those of you that are new to the topic, amazing resource here, a lot of great information. We'll try and get some resources out to you in terms of references as well. But there's we've been working on this for a long time. I think long after we're all gone, there will be plenty of opportunities as well. So would definitely hope that the next generation of leadership will take the mantle and continue this discussion. Dan?
Thank you all. I just want to again express that you guys aren't just an important group of communities for Washington. In many respects, what we're able to do throughout the Pacific Northwest is going to really help guide all regions of our country, because your face is to the sea, your back is to the mountains, you got less land to do things in. You've got to do it right, and people are going to learn from the codes that you write, the policies you enact, and the projects you get on the ground. So I'm delighted to have had this opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mayor Pete. Good night.
Good night, everyone.